Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and on Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. It is the last Sunday of the month, meaning it's time for our next president, only I have run out of presidents. Last month we wrapped with President Barack Obama. After him was Trump, who is once again president, becoming the second man in U.S. history to serve a split-term presidency. And I don't want to read a book on a sitting president because we don't know what all he's going to accomplish and or fumble in the next 4 years. And President Biden just stepped down like 2 months ago, right? 3 months ago, whatever it was. We're not going to have a decent book on his presidency for at least a decade, probably more than that, because we're still kind of waiting on a decent book on the Obama presidency, and he's been out even longer. So I've decided I'm done with the presidents. I'm not gonna start at the beginning and read another book on each of them. I think one is enough to kind of give me a broad overview of the sweeping scope of U.S. history, right? But I've decided to do a quick recap of the kind of the generalities, trends, just general things I've learned about the presidents as a body politic, if you will, versus any one president. And of course, I have a cocktail picked out, which is wholly appropriate to the topic at hand. It is a Commander-in-Chief, which is 2 ounces of rye whiskey, a half ounce of Amaretto, half ounce. Boy, that's a weird typo. Hold on. Is it a half ounce? Or did I actually write that right on there? I thought. Yeah, it's a half ounce, not a fifth of an ounce. A half ounce of orange juice. Wow, weird typo. And a quarter ounce of honey syrup. 2 dashes of orange bitters. Orange peel twist for garnish. Sugar rim optional, which I did do a sugar rim. Set it up downstairs. Didn't feel the need to do it up here. So let's do this. Starting with my rye. So, let's see here. Our nation was founded in 1787, right? We fought a very hard-fought revolutionary war against the British. And in 1787, we signed off on the Constitution. And from that time to today, we have had 47 presidents. Let's see, where are my ounce markers? Now, 47 presidents in that same intervening 200-odd... Oh, Katrina! Crap on toast. Screwed that up. I poured it into my cup. I was supposed to pour it into here. Bummer. I'm off to a good start. It's fine. It's fine. I got this. I got this. What is it, half ounce of Amaretto? Let's put this back over here so I don't fuck that up again. All right, so in the intervening 200... Oh, my God. 240 years, give or take. England has only had 10 monarchs. So our presidents have served between 30 days and 12 years, with the average being 5. The monarchy has served an average of 23.5 years. I mean, obviously some more, some less. Queen Elizabeth II being an extreme outlier with her, 70-year reign. The other outlier of the British monarchy was the other Queen, Victoria, who served 60-plus years. So isn't that fun? Did I say half ounce? Half ounce. Globally, the average monarchy is much more common than the American, voting every 4 to 8 years, right? Which is why American politics confuses the fuck out of the rest of the planet. Very frustrating for the other global leaders to know that they may strike a very good rapport with one person, only to have it have to learn to get along with somebody else 4 years later. I'm fine with this. This is fine. Let's keep them on their toes. It keeps America at the forefront and makes us all look crazy, which we kind of are. I mean, look at how much we are destroying each other and everything else. Love the mess. We got this. Our shortest serving president was William Henry Harrison. He died 30 days after taking office from pneumonia, which he contracted during his inaugural address. Longest serving was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, who served 12 years before dying in office. He had been voted in for 16, but he died very shortly after being sworn in for his 3rd term. And so we ended up with this average in between of about 5 years. So he was the extreme outlier, just like William Henry Harrison was the extreme outlier, right? They're the extremes of the scale. Our very first president, George Washington, he is the one who set the standard of 8 years. He was voted in the first time, second time, and then they really wanted him to run a 3rd time. He said, no, I've served my time, and passed the torch, if you will. And literally every president except for FDR decided that was good enough. I think Teddy Roosevelt was willing to run again. The vote was too split with William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson, and of course Wilson won that encounter in 1912. So really, the Roosevelt clan is a little on the power-hungry side, money-grubbing side, let me be in charge side, and the rest of every other politician has been decent enough to say, hey, 2 terms is enough. I don't really need more than that. Let's spread the wealth and let somebody else deal with the stress of this bullshit. Let's shake this up. Okay. Of our 47 presidents, 21 have served only 1 term of 4 years. 15 have served 2 8-year terms. We've had 8 presidents die in office, 4 from natural causes, 4 from assassination. The 4 who died in office were, of course, William Henry Harrison, who died of pneumonia, Zachary Taylor died of cholera, Warren G. Harding had a stroke, and FDR had a cerebral hemorrhage. The 4 who were assassinated, of course, Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, and John F. Kennedy Jr. John F. Kennedy, not Jr., excuse me, John F. Kennedy. I think I forgot to put my orange dashes in here. Did I put the dash of orange bitters? I don't feel like I did. Definitely not. I am off my game this day. I don't know what to say. I am very much off my game. The thing says an orange twist for garnish. The picture on their website shows an orange slice. I'm going to do an orange slice and just pop that bad boy in there. Okay, because of the deaths in office, people actually assume the vice presidency is the path to the presidency, and that is very much not the case historically. I mean, it's literally only over the dead bodies, and in one case, Nixon, the figurative dead body of the former president, that the vice president became to the seat of power, if you will. It's okay. It's okay. Rye is always a little bitter, but the honey syrup definitely cuts that, and the Amaretto definitely helps. It's okay. Let's see here. So Nixon was so disgraced that he was forced to resign with political pressure, making way for Vice President Ford. He stepped into the Oval Office, of course, in 74? Yeah. So we've only had 9 vice presidents become president after their predecessors did not complete their terms. Okay, 8 of them due to death, 1 of them due to resignation. Of the remaining vice presidents, only 2 have actually become president on an immediate campaign after the predecessor decided not to run again. You had Martin Van Buren when Andrew Jackson decided not to run for a 3rd term, and George H.W. Bush after Reagan's allotted 8 years were completed. We have since had 2 other vice presidents ascend to the presidency after an interim of a different president. So that would be Richard Nixon, who was vice president under Eisenhower. He became president 8 to 10 years later after, because we had JFK and LBJ, right? Lyndon B. Johnson. So Nixon became president after Eisenhower's. And then Joseph Biden, of course, was VP under Obama and became president after Trump served. So we had an intervening 4 years there. So really, historically, statistically, the vice presidency is only a pathway to power when someone dies. Otherwise, you only have a 8% chance of being elected in your own right. Those are not exactly rousing odds. Unless the president dies and you happen to be the vice president, then again, president dying in office, you only have a 17% chance. And that's including both death of natural causes and assassination. So vice presidency is not the pathway to power that people seem to think it is. Bad news for Kamala, obviously. Also bad news for J.D. Vance. Or good news given Trump's age and, how much people don't like him. Not abdicating anything. I think Trump is doing fine as he is. Assassination is a horrible way to gain power, and I'm pretty sure Vance does not want that. And nobody does, really, except for a few fringe outlier whack jobs who should really, really be on the FBI's watch list. Probably talking myself onto that list right now. Let me take another sip of this. Very glad I did the sugar room. I think the sugar helps to really cut the bitterness of the rye. Up until Harding, Warren G. Harding, who really embraced Coolidge and invited him to sit on the cabinet meetings, the vice presidency was kind of a do-nothing position. And I'm actually, kind of makes me wonder a little more about Harding. Like, did he have some sort of premonition that he was never going to see his full 4 years? Because he's the first, even Lincoln, who might have had a sense that he was not popular, given, that he oversaw a war. He didn't include Andrew Johnson in on his cabinet meeting so that Johnson could be prepared to hit the ground running. Only Harding had the foresight to do that, and quite a few presidents afterward have taken that in stride and said, yes, let's do that. Let's make sure you're ready to hit the ground running in case of, accidental death or, God forbid, assassination, right? Now, as far as party representation goes, we've had 2 presidents without any party. We had George Washington and John Tyler, although Tyler technically was a Whig when he started out. By the end of his, 4 years, because he stepped in after William Henry Harrison died. Neither side was talking to him anymore, and he was quite reviled at that point. So that was why the name of the book about him was President Without a Party. Well, he's one of two. The other one was George Washington. So you couldn't be in better company, Mr. President. Mr. President Tyler. We have had 3 Whigs, 4 if you count Tyler. We had William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, and Millard Fillmore. 1 Federalist, John Adams. 4 who were Democratic Republicans, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, and John Quincy Adams. The Democratic Party is actually older than the Grand Old Party, aka the Republicans, and we have had 15 Democratic presidents. Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, James K. Polk, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, James Carter, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Grover Cleveland twice. Read him out of order because twice, right? Since Cleveland is one of our 2 who served a split presidency, I guess that would technically make us 16 Democratic presidents. We have had 20 Republican presidents: Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Benjamin Harrison, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George Bush, and Donald Trump twice. So let's call it 21 Republican presidents. How about wars? Well, James Madison had the War of 1812. That was our first declared war after we became a nation. Can't really count the Revolutionary War. We weren't technically a nation then. We were a nation in revolution, in revolt. If we had lost, it would have gone very badly for the Founding Fathers. So we had the War of 1812 as our first declared war. We then had 30 years of peace before James K. Polk declared the Mexican-American War in 1846. And that was with the approval of Congress. Here is something that most people seem to be horrifyingly unaware of. Unless Congress signs off on it, it is not, in fact, a war. Not technically. It's a police action, which really just means the president's got to be in his bonnet and wants to go and assert American authority somewhere, and so does so with or without the approval of Congress. Excuse me. It's with Congress approving, right? Awkwardly winking. And I do that because the president couldn't do it if Congress didn't appropriate the funds to pay the military to do it. And so even though Congress may not actually declare the war, they do appropriate the funds and keep paying the soldiers and the military contractors. That would be that military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned of during his step-down speech. I won't say retirement speech, that's not quite the right word I'm looking for. But when he stepped down at Kennedy's inauguration, just before it was his final State of the Union address, so watch out for that military-industrial complex, and this is why. So we got Mexican-American War, so 1812, 1846. McKinley got Congress to agree to declare war against Spain in 1898, so that was the Spanish-American War. Wilson pulled us into the global conflict of 1917, and then FDR brought us into World War II in 1941. Those are our only declared wars, all 5 of them. Not our only conflicts. The Civil War, Indian Wars, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, none of these are declared wars. Technically, they're all illegal, although you could argue that the Civil War was putting down an insurrection, not technically a war, and didn't need to be declared because we weren't fighting anybody else. We were putting down an insurrection. That's one way to argue it. The other way to argue it is that it was the War of Northern Aggression. That's the other way to argue that one. Out of all our presidents, we've had exactly 2 who returned to public office after the presidency. So none of them have grand ambitions after that. You had John Quincy Adams, who returned to the House of Representatives and became the first representative to die on the House floor. Old age. Andrew Johnson returned to the Senate and died not too long after, although not on the Senate floor. I think he was visiting his daughter. Which means the vast majority of our presidents effectively retire and do not work again after the presidency. Most of them had money from investments or inheritance, at least up until 1958, when the Former Presidents Act was passed by Congress, which pays retirement to our former presidents, who now all make millions in public speaking and off of their investments. The Former Presidents Act is hinky as shit, and since we know former presidents can work, like John Quincy Adams did and Andrew Johnson did, as well as all those excellent public speaking fees, I don't believe we should be paying retirement to former presidents, or congressmen or senators for that matter. There were certain incidents in the past where Congress would vote for a pension for XYZ political figure. Dolly Madison is most famously one of them. Wife of James Madison. After James died, she quickly ran through any inheritance, taking care of her wastrel son. Good times. What a fun word that is, too. That's very, very Jane Austen. What a wastrel son she had. So they voted her a pension. And, yeah, okay. Because she was very highly popular political figure in her own right. Never mind just being the first lady and basically framing out what it meant to be first lady in the United States. She was a vivacious, popular person, and so Congress loved her. She did unquestionably serve and serve quite well as the nation's hostess to other nations. And of course, her service during the War of 1812, when she famously saved the portrait of George Washington, all of that garnished her a pension signed off on by Congress. There was a couple other presidents who didn't do so well, and I don't think it was Truman, because Truman did really well. There was at least one president that they had to vote a pension for, too, and I can't remember who it was. By and large, the presidents have done quite well for themselves post-presidency, and so having to pay their pensions, I resent it as a taxpayer. To that end, I learned in the Obama book last month that, quote, over time, this conception of presidential power gave way to an entirely different one, in which former presidents became increasingly public figures, and an office of post-president, something never imagined by the founding fathers, emerged, complete with generous pensions for ex-presidents and their wives, substantial office space, free postage, funds to hire staff and maintain an office, and discretionary funds for the former president. I did not include that quote in my review of the Obama book last month because Obama is not the only president to benefit from this bullshit. All right, it seemed like that was part of a bigger picture, not just the Obama presidency, right? We paid out pensions for the president, their respective wives, office space for all and their post-presidential staffing since 1958. Our tax dollars at work, aren't we proud? I would suggest that that's a budget that maybe Elon Musk's Doge should look at, because why the hell are we paying for all of this for people who make anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 in speaking fees for a single speech at an event? Ridiculous. So basically, even when they are clearly capable of footing the bill themselves, like, say, Jackie Kennedy, who went on to marry billionaire Aristotle Onassis, this on top of whatever inheritance she received from the millionaire Kennedys, we paid for her office staff, up until she died, and on to present. Aren't we thrilled that that's where our money goes? I'm totally licking the ice off, because rye whiskey is very bitter. And this is coming from somebody who actually enjoys gin and tonics. Rye whiskey is very bitter. The sugar helps. About the only public expense I could get behind having to pay in support of former presidents would be Secret Service. Because whether you love or hate a former president, he served. He served in a capacity that very few can. Very, very few aspire to. Very few are able to bear the weight of that responsibility. And whether you love or hate somebody, you are not the only person on the planet to love or hate his former policies. So to that end, I very much believe that their service merits protection. Them and their families. So I would not begrudge Secret Service protection for former presidents and their wives, and even their children if the children so desire, because once he steps into that global spotlight, he has a target painted on his back forever. Forever and ever. And so that is the only thank you I feel we owe the former presidents for their service, is protection for their life. They can pay their own damn bills. Now, one thing I learned, unfortunately quite late, because this was not even mentioned until the book on President Bush, Bush 43, so Bush Jr., the Office of Legal Counsel, which basically exists to create legal justification for anything the president wants to do. Absolutely fucking delightful. That's also done at taxpayer expense. We learned that starting with the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, every president from Woodrow Wilson through Joe Biden, with the exception of Calvin Coolidge, has overseen massive expansions of federal government, all at our expense. Again, my tax dollars at work. Gotta love it. Constitutionally, the first 120 years were golden. They required checks and balances. Those checks and balances were decimated by Woodrow Wilson when he oversaw the passage of the 17th Amendment. Prior to that, senators were the state's representatives to Congress, meaning the state as a body politic. The legislative branches of the individual states voted on the senators. So for Nevada, instead of me voting every 6 years for whoever our state senators are, the legislative body of the state of Nevada would get together and say, we want this person to represent us for the next 6 years. And then it didn't matter who the governor was or what the overwhelming party politics were of, say, Las Vegas and Reno, the two major political centers of the state of Nevada, because if the entire rest of the state voted one way or the other, then the body politics in the legislative body of Nevada, at the Nevada state level, would say, we want this person to go and represent our interest. It was how things were kept fair for the little guy who didn't live in a major metropolitan area. That's gone. Fuck you, Woodrow Wilson. The first 120 years were glorious because the federal government was kept very small via starvation. They didn't have the money to become this massive behemoth that requires Elon Musk to go out there with a chainsaw and literally cut it to shreds. In 1913, as he left office, William Howard Taft ratified the 16th Amendment, legalizing the income tax, and government has grown ever since. So there's been a lot of good and a lot of bad with our presidents, but ultimately they're human, and I think that's an important lesson to remember. They are very much as human as you or I, and we need to stop putting them on pedestals and worshiping them, because there's nothing there worth worshiping. They're a politician. What's the old joke? How do you know a politician is lying? His lips are moving. Meaning if he's talking, he's lying. Feeling very buzzed here. I have a wee bit of a cold, so I have had several shots of bourbon and tea trying to kill it, and now I'm doing a, rye whiskey cocktail. So the number one thing I have learned since starting this is that they are human. We didn't start to really put them on pedestals the way we did until JFK. He really glamorized the presidency. And I think part of that probably is the advent of television, right? You had that first television debate between Nixon and JFK, in which JFK just trounced him and looked very suave and debonair, very young, very hip. And so we started treating them like celebrities, and they're not. They're just people. They experience heartache and loss like all of us do. And more than a few of them experienced death of a child, even while in office, in which the nation mourned with them, because it's tragic. It's always tragic when a child dies. But I think the most important thing I learned is that while the little people, we the people down here in the trenches, scream at each other via social media about Trump, Obama, Biden, and Bush, they're all colleagues. They all get along with each other and respect each other. We don't. We treat each other like garbage. We talk about throwing each other in concentration camps because how dare you vote for XYZ? While XYZ gets along just fine with each other. It's a game to them. Once you hit those halls of power, Thomas Sowell, I think, is the one who said, politicians have three problems. First, getting elected. Second, getting reelected. Number three is actually doing what they say they'll do to their constituents. I'm paraphrasing badly, but it's something very similar to that. We the people squabble in the streets like what we think actually matters, like what we put on social media matters. Like Twitter is the be-all and end-all of existence. Sorry, X. Worst rebranding ever is calling it from Twitter to X, because nobody calls it X. We all call it Twitter. You should really just go back to that. The deep state is running amok. Despite any current politicians' attempts to roll it back, it runs amok. And like the idiot children we all are, we rally to our candidates like it's life and death, rather than doing what sensible people should do. Talk to your fucking neighbors. The guy voted for your competition, invite him over for dinner. Talk about anything but politics. Find out what they're like. Find out about his kids, his grandkids, what he does on the weekends. Where does he train his dog? What does he do to train his dog? His dog is very polite. Talk about anything but politics, and you're going to find out they're just human. They're just like you. These deep divisions do nothing to hurt our elected officials, but they do tear we the people apart into little tiny shreds. They result in families that never speak to each other. For what? nothing, you're not hurting anybody but each other, right? The politicians, they're going to be just fine in DC. They don't give a fuck about you. Treat your family like they're family. Not like it's a Dear Reddit story waiting to happen because you just gotta go viral with whatever bullshit you think is important. Wow, that took a cynical dark turn. I'm gonna slam the rest of this cocktail and then I'm gonna try and edit this, and I'll see you guys next week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. Next week we'll come back with something new. Bye.